debunking 3 Islamic scientific claims. Come join me as we take on 3 bold claims that Muslims say are scientific proof the Quran and Muhammad were divinely inspired. But here's the truth. Science doesn't confirm these claims. It completely crushes them. We'll break down all 3 and show how modern evidence exposes them as false, misleading, or outright fabricated. These so-called miracles, debunked hard. Part 1. Mountains are pegged stakes. Yikes! There is a very common apologetic claim among some Islamic miracle proponents that the Quran's references to mountains supposedly describe their function as stabilizing pegs or stakes, reflecting modern geological understanding. However, this claim doesn't hold up under close scientific or historical scrutiny. The Quran's language is metaphorical and pre-scientific, not technical or predictive, such as the Quran says, "Have we not made the earth as a bed and the mountains as pegs?" Quran 78:6-7. "And he has set firm mountains in the earth so that it would not shake with you." Quran 16:15. Some apologists appeal to isostasy, pointing out that mountains have deep roots beneath them, as if that somehow supports the Quran's claim. But this misunderstands the science. Isostasy isn't about anchoring or stabilizing the crust. It's about equilibrium, like ice floating in water. Those deep roots don't stop the crust from shaking. They're simply part of how the crust passively balances on the mantle. So while the metaphor of pegs might sound poetic, it doesn't hold up scientifically. Mountains aren't stabilizers. They're side effects of instability. Pointing to isostasy to defend the Quranic claim is like pointing to smoke to explain fire suppression. It confuses a side effect with a solution. While the modern terminology didn't exist, early Greek and Indian thinkers had already theorized about underground structures and balancing forces in the earth well before the Quran. In fact, modern geology shows the exact opposite of what the Quran claims. Mountains don't prevent earthquakes. They're often formed by the very tectonic activity that causes earthquakes. The most earthquake-prone regions on Earth are where the largest mountain ranges are found, such as the Himalayas, result from the Indian and Eurasian plates colliding. The Andes, formed by subduction of the Nazca Plate under the South American Plate. The Zagros Mountains, in Iran, another highly seismically active region. These are not stabilizers. They're byproducts of massive ongoing crustal instability. If the Quran was conveying divine geological insight, it got it backwards. Instead of offering predictive knowledge, it reflects ancient prescientific thinking, where people saw mountains as pegs or stakes keeping the earth steady, a metaphor common in early cosmologies but refuted by everything we know about plate tectonics today. Part 2. Moon splitting. Wow. Dr. Zakir Naik, a well-known Islamic preacher, often references the splitting of the moon as a literal miracle performed by the Prophet Muhammad. This event is rooted in the Quranic verse Surah Al-Qamar 54:1, which states, "The hour has drawn near, and the moon has split." According to Hadith literature, this miracle occurred when the Prophet was challenged by the Meccans to perform a sign. He allegedly pointed to the moon, which then split into 2 distinct parts, visible over the surrounding hills, before rejoining. Dr. Naik maintains that this event was a physical, historical miracle, not a metaphor or vision. He emphasizes that it is supported by multiple eyewitness hadiths, including those narrated by companions like Anas ibn Malik and Abdullah ibn Masud. Because these narrations are mutawatir, reported by numerous independent sources, he argues they are highly authentic within Islamic tradition. For Dr. Naik, miracles in Islam are real and serve as evidence of divine intervention, even if they defy modern scientific explanation. He often says that just because something cannot be verified or explained by science today does not mean it did not happen. Some Muslim apologists, including those in Dr. Naik's orbit, have occasionally pointed to claims that NASA discovered a crack or rift on the moon, suggesting it could be evidence of this miracle. However, NASA has never confirmed any such finding related to a historical splitting and rejoining of the moon. The visible lunar rills and geological features are scientifically explained by natural processes, not supernatural events. Naik typically treats these claims as interesting but not central to his argument, insisting that belief in the miracle stands on Quranic and prophetic authority alone. Critics, including secular scholars and some Muslim modernists, often argue that the Quranic verse may refer to a future eschatological event, a sign of the approaching day of judgment, rather than a past miracle. They also note the lack of historical records from other civilizations to support the idea that a global, visible lunar event occurred in the 7th century. Dr. Naik responds by highlighting the limitations of ancient communication, suggesting that the absence of non-Islamic reports does not invalidate the claim, especially when backed by Islamic scripture and trusted narrators. In summary, Dr. Zakir Naik defends the splitting of the moon as a real witnessed miracle meant to validate Muhammad's prophethood. He relies on Islamic texts as sufficient evidence, and while open to scientific discussion, he ultimately prioritizes faith and scriptural authenticity over empirical verification. In the Proud Infidel interview titled, "Did Muhammad Split the Moon in Two?" Richard Dawkins critically dismisses the Islamic claim, pointing out that such a global, astronomical event would have been recorded by multiple civilizations, but wasn't. He frames it as an implausible religious assertion with no supporting evidence. Quote from Dawkins, "If the moon really had split in two, the Chinese would have noticed. The Aztecs would have noticed. Everybody would have noticed. It would be in history books. It isn't. The moon-splitting story is particularly fragile because Islam holds it up as one of Muhammad's only public miracles. If Allah truly split the moon to prove Muhammad's prophethood, the miracle failed its purpose. No one outside a small circle of believers ever documented it, believed it, or converted because of it. Even worse, insisting on the literal truth of such an event requires rejecting the basic laws of physics, astronomy, and historical documentation, and accepting as proof the unverified reports of a handful of followers in 7th century Arabia. If another religion made a similar claim, that its founder split a planet in two with no outside witnesses, Muslims would rightly dismiss it as absurd. It is intellectually dishonest to expect others to suspend reason for Islam's benefit. Part 3. Egged Earth, really? Dr. Zakir Naik has claimed that the Quran describes the spherical shape of the earth and the reflection of the moon's light, citing verses like 79, 30, and 25, 61. However, both of these claims can be challenged based on the scientific and historical context. First, regarding the spherical shape of the earth, Naik argues that the Quran's use of the word dahaha, from the root daha in verse 79:30, meaning spread out or egg-shaped, refers to a spherical earth. However, the traditional understanding of the term is that it simply means spread out, which is often interpreted as describing the earth's flattened shape rather than its roundness. This concept of a spread-out earth was common in ancient cultures and does not specifically point to a spherical shape. In fact, the idea of the earth being spherical was already well established by ancient Greek philosophers, such as Pythagoras and Aristotle, centuries before the Quran was written. Second, on the claim about the moon's reflected light, Naik argues that the Quran's reference to the moon's light in verses like 25:61 aligns with modern science, which states that the moon reflects sunlight. However, the Quran's use of the word nur, light, does not specifically indicate that the light is reflected. In ancient times, many cultures, including the Arabs, believed that the moon emitted its own light, not that it reflected the sun's light. This understanding persisted until the 17th century, when astronomers confirmed the moon's reflective nature. The Quranic verses describing the moon's light simply reflect the common ancient view that the moon was a source of light, not the scientific discovery of its reflective nature. Both the claim of a spherical earth and the moon's reflected light can be traced to ancient knowledge that was widely accepted long before the Quran was revealed. These assertions do not demonstrate divine insight or an advanced understanding of science, but rather reflect pre-scientific cultural views. Some Islamic scholars' interpretation of the Arabic word dahaha, in Surah An-Nazi'at 79:30, which some claim indicates the earth is egg-shaped. The speaker discusses how this interpretation has been used to suggest that the Quran describes a geospherical earth, aligning with modern scientific understanding. However, this interpretation is not supported by classical Arabic dictionaries or authoritative Quranic exegeses. The term dahaha traditionally means spread out or extended, referring to the earth's expansion, and does not inherently imply an egg-shaped form. The association with an ostrich egg is a modern interpretation and is not found in early Islamic scholarship. Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson discusses the Earth's shape, emphasizing that while it's often depicted as a perfect sphere, it's actually an oblate spheroid. This means the Earth is slightly flattened at the poles and bulging at the equator due to its rotation. Tyson uses the analogy of a pear shape to illustrate this concept, noting that the Earth's equatorial bulge is more pronounced in the southern hemisphere, giving the planet a subtle pear-like appearance. This shape results from the centrifugal force caused by the Earth's rotation, which pushes material outward at the equator. The difference in radius between the poles and the equator is approximately 21 kilometers, about 13 miles, a relatively small but significant variation. Tyson's explanation highlights how Earth's dynamic processes contribute to its unique shape, which is more accurately described as a pear-shaped oblate spheroid. Tyson emphasizes that the precise scientific description of Earth's shape doesn't align with the notion of an egg-shaped Earth, especially when considering the non-symmetrical bulge that occurs because of centrifugal forces, not any inherent egg-like geometry. The ostrich egg claim is a modern distortion, neither linguistically supported nor scientifically accurate. Dr. Tyson's explanation dismisses the egg-shaped interpretation as inaccurate, both from a scientific and geometric perspective, reinforcing the idea that the Quranic description doesn't align with modern understanding of Earth's shape. If you found this exploration thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical.